Special Operations Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine disrupted the advance of Russian occupation forces in the Kupyansk direction. The press center of the Special Operations Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reported on the successful actions of the operators of the 8th Special Operations Regiment. As noted in the Kupyansk direction, a group of soldiers from the 8th Separate Regiment of the Special Operations Forces prevented the enemy from advancing with their actions. Using attack FPV drones, Ukrainian fighters drove enemy soldiers into a building. The report said, after this, the operators cleared several buildings where the enemy had holed up. As a result, 3 Russian servicemen were killed and the rest were forced to retreat. The Special Operations Forces added, Thibaut Fouillé, a military analyst and deputy director of the Institute for Strategic and Defense Studies at the French think tank, emphasized that the key element remains the ability to withstand and methodically weaken the enemy rather than deliver a single devastating blow. According to him, success will accumulate gradually. As the publication notes, if the situation does not change, the possible loss of Kupyansk could coincide with the onset of autumn slush and cold weather, which would deal a morale and psychological blow to the Ukrainian army after nearly 4 years of combat. Recall, in September 2022, Ukrainian forces successfully captured poorly prepared Russian defensive positions in the Kharkiv region and advanced north, east and south, reaching the Oskol River and liberating the city of Kupyansk, a key railway junction. 3 years later, the city again found itself under threat of Russian capture, according to Radio Free Europe. The article notes that this situation demonstrates both Ukraine's resilience and the Kremlin's willingness to accept significant losses. We are in a state of attrition. The decisive factor is the ability to endure, to patiently undermine the enemy's potential. Everything will accumulate, rather than there being a decisive blow, noted military expert Thibaut Fouillé. According to the publication, if the situation does not change, the fall of Kupyansk could coincide with the onset of autumn rains and cold weather, which would be a demoralizing blow to Ukrainian troops after 44 months of war. Russian troops, primarily entrenched on the eastern bank of the Oskol River, have been slowly advancing north for several months, concentrating their forces on other sectors of the front. Kupyansk remains strategically important thanks to the railway line, which allows Ukrainian units to resupply from Kharkiv. In early September, Russian troops attempted to bypass Ukrainian positions on the northern outskirts of the city through an underground gas pipeline network beneath the Oskol River. Ukrainian forces claimed to have destroyed the pipeline and killed or captured dozens of Russian soldiers, although an unknown number of Russian troops may have remained in the area. A similar situation is observed in the Donetsk region. The city of Pokrovsk, a key transport hub, has been under threat of encirclement for most of the year. Northeast of Pokrovsk in August, small Russian units broke through Ukraine's weak defenses east of Dobropilya, indicating a shortage of personnel and overstretched defensive positions. Radio Free Europe highlights that Russian tactics this year involve using small groups of soldiers, sometimes on motorcycles or all-terrain vehicles, to quickly outflank Ukrainian positions and consolidate their positions while awaiting reinforcements. Ukrainian forces unleashed the full power of their long-range strike arsenal in a coordinated campaign to dismantle Russia's Pokrovsk offensive before they can reorganize and regroup. Euromaidan press media outlet reports, destroying one Russian base after another, as well as troop concentrations and supply routes. They shattered the enemy's buildup paving the way for Ukrainian infantry to advance. Despite already massive losses and several pockets of encircled troops in the Dobropilya salient, the Russians are trying to salvage the Pokrovsk disaster in the only way they know how, by deploying even more infantry and making it bigger. To break the final will of the Russian 51st Combined Arms Army, Ukrainian long-range strike units are going to work, combining the efforts of HIMARS, artillery, drones and aviation to eliminate all reserves the Russians bring into the area. Near Uspenivka, an Su-27 was led by drone reconnaissance and targeted stormtroopers preparing for an attack with JDAM bombs, wiping them out in an instant. Euromaidan Press says. Further north in Udachne, another wave of JDAM strikes eliminated 2 Russian groups massing for a push. Another proof that Ukrainian aviation is relentlessly hunting Russian build-up sites. The desperate situation has forced Russians to push artillery forward much further in hopes of disrupting Ukrainian logistics and reinforcements coming in, but this overextension has proven catastrophic yet again. South of Pokrovsk, a Ukrainian counter-battery strike destroyed a D-30 howitzer and its ammunition stockpile. 20 kilometers deeper, a BM-27 Uragan MLRS, trying to change positions, was tracked and obliterated by a Ukrainian drone strike. East of Pokrovsk, drone surveillance caught a truck delivering shells to an artillery position. A HIMARS rocket struck precisely as the ammunition was unloaded to maximize damage, causing a massive secondary detonation that annihilated the crew, the truck, and the artillery system. Russian attempts to rely on air support also backfired south of Pokrovsk when an Mi-8 helicopter tried to deliver supplies to ground units but was intercepted by Ukrainian FPV drones. One drone slammed into the external fuel tank, engulfing the machine in mid-air. This marked the first confirmed case of an FPV drone striking a flying Russian helicopter, and it shows how desperate the situation for Russian logistics is becoming if they are ready to risk expensive helicopters to deliver supplies to the front. Russian logistics routes and attack paths are also systematically dismantled by the Ukrainian army. Euromaidan Press says. A MiG-29 strike with an AASM hammer bomb demolished a dam used by the Russians as a direct assault route. The blast destroyed the roadway and water poured across the area, cutting off the southern approach to Myrolyubivka. With one strike, Ukraine not only halted a possible Russian advance, but reshaped the terrain to its defensive advantage, as the area now turned into a marshland river. Overall, Ukraine's strike campaign shows that Russia has no way out of the Pokrovsk disaster. The hope of Russian commanders to escape the unsuccessful Dobropilya breakthrough attempt by overwhelming Ukrainians with mass assaults and diverting attention is being crushed by Ukraine's well-integrated strike defense network. Euromaidan Press says. Every Russian movement, whether by infantry, artillery or helicopters, is tracked, targeted and destroyed before it can reach the battlefield effectively, as Pokrovsk's defenses deny Russia the chance to mount any proper offensive.